So, very good afternoon to all of our audience. Yes, we are on the second day and coming to a very important session about detection, right? So, the session name is like hunting in a dense jungle. What are the visibility aspects, coverage, accuracy, intelligence required, various tools and expertise to use the tools. So, who all better to guide us than we have a power pack panel. So let me just quickly introduce the session chair and moderator is Mr. Vinayak Godse, Senior Vice President, DSCI. The esteemed panelists are Mr. Sanjay Kumar Tiwari, he is Head of Information Security for ICICI Securities, Mr. Avinash Prasad, VP and Business Head, Managed Security Services, Tata Communication Services Limited, and Mr. Manish Shah, he's Director Sales Engineering India and SARC for McAfee Enterprise. So, just to once again, very warm welcome to all our panelists for this important session. Requesting the platform team to have our panelists on stage and let's start rolling. Thank you so much.
Sanjay, so we'll wait for a minute and then we'll start Manish and Avinash.
Yes, Sanjay should be getting promoted. He was with us and seems
Yeah.
to be there's some connection issue maybe.
Okay, I think let's start. I think you would. Uh, uh,
Yes, sir, you can start. He's connecting. We'll send him on stage
sure,
shortly.
sure. Okay, so thank you both, Manish and Avinash, to joining us for this particular discussion because entire discussion about security is now coming to your ability to respond in a time and in a time is more importantly and to the precise level of defense that you basically should have. So but the response is increasingly engineering wise and process wise and operation wise is challenging as well basically because the way we are seeing the digitization, the kind of devices that are getting participant in transaction processing kind of application that we are deploying, and the pace and volume at which the digitization is happening basically. So there are a number of things needs to be doing basically, and the if you really are somebody who is hunting threads, then the jungle out there is quite dense basically, right? And in that, how do you basically make sure that whatever you do is precise, it's accurate, and more importantly, the contextual as well, and you do whatever you require to do. It's very difficult task, and I would probably like to understand for the benefit of the participants here, basically from the Sanjay, who is managing security at ICICI Securities, basically. So, how do you see? One is the focus of security going to more detection side, and other part is the challenge of detection, basically. So, what day-to-day challenges do you see, and how these challenges are getting increasingly significant for the CISOs like you?
Yeah, obviously. So, as you rightly said, due to the increasing threat landscape and a lot of thing done on the prevention side, the key to everything increasing is detection and the response side of it. Obviously, threat detection is one of the key today, and to achieve that, there is a lot of hunting and threat intelligence. That is the key part of actually detection. Now detection helps us to a certain extent, except for the trend or behavioral analysis, or maybe detecting the known patterns which is there. That's the key that is been detected. Other than that, new ways, new methods and 0 days are still not detected unless your threat hunting is to that mature, or the skill behind the threat hunting is to that level kind of thing. So ultimately, if you could say, it is the skill and expertise of the person who is hunting and detecting things. He needs very sharp observation about threats. So ultimately, so you will say a lot of threat hunting that is there. You can detect things, but the skill of the person and the correct threat intelligence are the key areas for any good detection, or the maybe a valuable detection that is happening. So I can say, it's like finding a needle from the haystack. That's the ultimate line that you could say. And day by day, this haystack is increasing, piling up, and the needle is getting very thinner and thinner. How do you identify the actual thing out of it? And that is where the challenges are. Few of the challenges that I see right now is the data growth, because the SOCs and SIMs are actually plagued with high rates of data growth, organizational silos, and which actually both impact the visibility of the actual data, that is the real meaningful data. Then the due to which all these increasing EPS, TPS kind of thing, the cost of the SOCs has increased. You have new platforms that you have to build underneath your tools, to have that search and queries very really quick, so that you have number of queries run and find some meaningful out of it. And the couple of others are lack of context and complexity. The threat complexity has increased drastically. So all these are the challenges from the real
Yeah.
live scenario, or the real world scenario kind of thing.
So against these challenges, Avinash, can you be really devising your threat hunting ecosystem in more strategic, holistic way?
Right. So yeah, firstly, thanks, Vinayak, and hello, and again, welcome to all my co-panelists, and hello to all the audience as well. As Sanjay mentioned, right, and he did touch upon several things. And it was set my mind also thinking, right, what the CISO is considering in terms of the what capabilities are to be derived over here. So, firstly, threat hunting, when it initially started off, right, and we started hearing of it, it was a little bit like, okay, it's an art, you have to figure out, how to do it, what to do, and all that. But I think since then, the last few years, it has come a certain way, clearly. It has become a science and a certain approach that we can have. Clearly, we see also here called out that it's about coverage in the topic of our discussion itself is how to get the right coverage, which threat services to focus on more intelligence, right? What how does threat intelligence play a role, and the fact that what tools are available to be able to do that, to be able to clearly improve both detect visibility and through detection capabilities, and kind of as they used to say in Star Trek, right? Go where no man has ever gone before. So mainly, what I see today is that the the elevation of the importance of threat intel in SOC environments is clearly to be seen. So that's one very important lever and tool available to kind of form one of the basic initiation points for how to go about looking at threat hunting. I would say now, right now, I'm kind of focusing a little bit on the tools and then the science part of it, right? How I look at it and how we see it in Tata. Once we have that, then the second part is understanding a little bit of the adversary psyche, right? Which is where the thinking which can be derived from around the TTPs coming in from a MITRE framework, etc., is really helping. That's a backdrop where okay, what are we really looking for? How do you map it, right? Try to figure out, more, let's say, from a geopolitical standpoint, if somebody is trying to get at specific things, right? What technique slash then tactic, etc., will fall under. And the third part of it is having a good context, and Sanjay did mention also good context of the environment. So that's where then the hypothesizing can start. That okay, what are we really looking for, right? So and that can come from a good understanding of the infra environment, users, even applications and processes part of it, and the typical kind of known threats also that have been happening in the past. So what we are seeing is by being able to add some of these key building blocks, and then of course the if the environment has, let's say, EDR has got more analytics tools available and all of that's great. Certain environments will have that, certain environments will not have that, right? But to get to a more automated, more structured approach, that is also kind of needed. With all of this is then comes a responsibility, right? Are you going to be a more incident responder? Are you a threat hunter? Where do you spend your time more? So that's where mature SOC we are seeing a separation of responsibilities also, in terms of where the threat hunter is going to spend more time vis-a-vis where the responders are going to focus on. So that's in terms of the kind of right role modeling. So I would say it's a mix of having the right approach towards that, being able to rely on frameworks, certain tools that can support that, and with certain role clarity, one can start seeing the benefits
Yeah.
emerging
And,
from it.
and I'm seeing that structure evolving, like one side frameworks are evolving and these capabilities are coming, and some designated services also evolving to help you doing that actually. But but Manish, I think when we talk about threat hunting, we always talk about certain workflows, some event triage basically. But then there are a lot of those modern threats basically that we see, fileless campaign or ransomware or specific to cloud native applications basically. So to get a visibility and also do very proactive threat hunting to this kind of a environment that we are seeing, so is it really can you really use these frameworks and capabilities and services to make sure that the threat hunting is catching up with this kind of violation that we are seeing?
First of all, thanks, Vinayak, for having me here, and it's a pleasure. Um, yeah, it's an established fact that the legacy security operations that we have, the method and the methodologies that they use, the workflow that they use, it's not been so effective as compared to the early times, right? We have not been able to keep pace with the modern threats, and that results in all these security breaches that we keep hearing about. Now, what are the underlying challenges? If you look at that, the first underlying challenge is the ever-growing complexity of IT landscape. You have digital transformation happening. You have cloud adoption. More and more organizations are adopting cloud. That means now you have more complexities. The direct implication of it is that the threat surface is increasing. We have employees who have direct device to cloud access now. So the threat surface is available for the adversaries, and it's a phenomenal opportunity for them. Likewise, now other implications which are there is the growing complexity on security operations and the methodology of security operations itself. The traditional legacy security operations, right? Too many siloed tools to work with, then disconnected controls, and then the manual workflow that pushes all the security operations to work in more of a reactive form, I would say. And they're already overloaded with the alerts, right? Then there's new challenges of complex IT landscape. You have new threats to look at. You have threats coming in from ES, PaaS, and SaaS-based workloads, which were not there earlier. These are added complexities to security operations. So eventually, what's happening is that the attackers have more stay within the network. That's called as dwell time, and they have more opportunities to laterally move within the organization infrastructure, gain privilege access, and then eventually exfiltrate the data. So this is the underlying challenge that we have in with the legacy security operations model, and the need is to be more proactive. But the challenge is where is the bandwidth to be more proactive? The security operations team is already overstretched, right? The only way that you can disrupt a dwell time is if you are doing threat hunting, you are doing proactive threat hunting. That's the only way you can disrupt the dwell time. So what should organizations do, correct? I mean, these are the challenges that we talked about. What should the organization do? I think important is that we look at the core principles. We focus on four pillars which are already always there for security operations. The first important is the efficacy of protection. The protection efficacy becomes most important. Second is visibility. Third would be the analytics part, and I think fourth I would say would be automation part. So if you look at MITRE workflow for endpoint protection evaluations, I mean, they do that evaluations for endpoint protection. The first 3 points are already covered, which is visibility part, then the analytics part, and the protection efficacy. That means if an organization does not have a very strong endpoint protection strategy in place, I would include even EDR kind of technologies into it. I think they're falling behind on the SecOps maturity curve. That's the first thing to do. Second, I would say that we also need to augment our security operations, adding more intelligence to it. And it's worth considering the XDR as in technology, XDR framework, right? Because it's no more about having a complete visibility with only endpoints. You have direct device to cloud access. You have ES applications, and you need telemetry from from those cloud instances also. You need telemetry from network, and XDR provides you that multi-vector visibility that's very, very critical right
Yeah.
now. So also the XDRs would work on the entire attack life cycle. They'll give you a robust framework, not only for the time when the compromise happens, but before that, to prioritize your risk, predict what can be impact of a risk or adversary campaign into your environment, and what are the steps that you can take. So
Yeah.
it's like
Let me come to
prescribing that.
Sanjay with this, I think, very good context that both you and Manish, you and Avinash put together. Let me come to Sanjay. So, you are setting up these operations, Sanjay, and you are devising strategies for this. And help me understand how you started with putting together capabilities for this, how you organize this effort, basically, which way you had gone, what kind of strategy that you laid on for this.
Yeah, yeah. For the hunting and the detection per se, if you say, so it's a part of an overall response and recovery type of an verticals that we started to work. So we identified the actual landscape of our. So it's a detailed enterprise, or you could say a detailed risk assessment of my crown jewels, what all digital assets and the infrastructure assets are there within the organization. And then I identified the key tier 1 tier 2 kind of an maybe you could say an application system servers. And then you build an maybe monitoring device, a SOC or SIM kind of a thing, some automation layer above it. And then you have a couple of guys, you source for threat intelligence from the different sources where you feel. So generally all the organizations would be having few threat intelligence sources from the different service provider, which are very maybe tried and tested kind of a thing, and that would give you a value. But the key to all this thing is the skill behind all this, who is detecting this, the threat hunter who is identifying that, and the context of the thing. So the reason I am saying the context is because that is the where you'll get the actual visibility around the detection per se. As it is been said, there's a lot of prevention there, but obviously that cannot help you secure to the maximum, because there are ways and means someone can get into this. So that is where the threat hunter has to, or the person who is actually detecting the. So two types of thing. One is the proactive kind of a detection that happens, and once so I identify there is something malicious happening into my environment, I go ahead and try to eradicate that. The second is something has already happened and you detect that and try to respond to those queries or respond to those attacks kind of thing. Maybe it would be at a very initial stage kind of a thing. And that is where we have built in a capability at the skill level. And as I say, there is a lot of skill shortage around, because you have to build that skill to identify that needle out of the haystack and give you the value. And as I said, lack of context is one of the key challenges that most of the organizations would be facing, because to identify actually true positive from the false policy is actually very very difficult task. And that is where we addressed a lot of things around, and we organize and we achieve. So there is an SLA bound kind of a thing. We respond, we have a proper response mechanism around it, and we respond to these detections kind of thing.
So, Avinash, I think one of the key thing that always come into this kind of discussion is the skill and the process and structure that you lay down, and basically expertise in the area, basically. So, one is certainly would like, means the CISOs or the organization would like to really scale up the effort here, but how do you manage the skill is a big problem, basically. So being offering these kind of services in more managed way, basically. So what is your experience of or you are learning in terms of the skill that we are finding in the market, and are they enough available, or we need to take some specific effort on this part?
Right. Yeah, given the line of business that we are in, from a data communication standpoint, all about managed services and solutions. So, surely, that's an expectation that we face every day regularly as well. And to start with, the very simple, candid point is that the challenge is very much there for everyone. And
Yeah,
it's not a challenge purely only for the enterprise or for the service provider. Definitely, the challenge is there for everyone. So for us, it becomes very important to have a method to be able to, deal with it, whereby, we have to look at our entire talent pyramid, uh, firstly, just from a people skills and enablement perspective, that how are we building the base of the pyramid? How does the foundation come in, right? And then how do we move people up, right? Examples of building the foundation would be, this has been going on for a few years now. The right kind of academia relationships does help, because it gives a more sustained focus towards, what how the output of talent is becoming a bit more aligned to what we would need in cybersecurity programs, and the kind of, and therefore the role that we can play in terms of setting labs, in terms of curriculum, in terms of expert lectures, etc., that we provide. So that is something that, we work on, and we have in a certain ecosystem of institutions that we work with in terms of building the foundation. Another important aspect of building the foundation is, of course, given the rapid pace of, change in technology, is the labs environment that we would have on our own side for the purposes of simulation, for the purposes of understanding integration aspects, dealing with these silos of information, how to fuse it together, right? Having the right software skills today. So much is dependent on
yeah, yeah,
software, the right software skills, who are able to help us build the right workflows, some data scientists, and then the portal layer
yeah.
also. So
I
those
mean,
are
these
additional
operations
skills.
are, until
Yeah.
now it was more managerial operation, but it's now more engineering operations, right? So,
Correct. And it's not just core security, right?
yeah,
It's a mix, it's a smart
yeah,
mix of
yeah,
getting all that, that is a very important part. But we also realize that, beyond a point, given the talent pool in the industry and other things also, right? What we automate is what we are going to ensure that we kind of, protect ourselves against the risk of talent as talent keeps moving
yeah,
from, place to place.
yeah, yeah,
So we clearly are looking at that also as we start moving up the talent pyramid also, right? What tools and automations are available for, the personnel, for our SOC engineers, for threat hunting, etc., for people to be able to carry that out. So, for example, playbooks have really helped the SOC analyst become much more effective,
yeah, yeah,
with much lesser time being spent, fatigue being much lesser, not chasing people for XYZ type of data, etc. That's something that we are seeing. And, reference frameworks, as I said, with MITRE, etc., helping people create maps and then,
yeah,
document
yeah,
effectively in terms of how
yeah,
they would want to approach.
yeah.
So
And
those are some of the approaches I think, we need to
yeah.
continue working on.
Yeah, and one challenge here is definitely the tools and technology. Somebody could able to manage and help with technology and tool, but another challenge is to apply that larger critical thinking. So that you can devise the use cases, you can think about what could go wrong with the
Right.
organization. So that is definitely a challenge. But yes, with consistent effort you have been providing, and other ecosystem is also building, is probably helping us evolving that kind of skill set. But one of the important area that I want to really deliberate here on, ma'am, is this also means to, because last 1 or 2 years had been also, resiliency was one of the key area for discussion and deliberation basically. So does this effort that we put it here basically feeds back to ability, continuity, resiliency discussion, Manish, and I will also put this question to Sanjay as well.
Yeah, so a very interesting question. And to Sanjay's point, where he mentioned the importance of data protection, right? I think when we're talking about business continuity planning and when you're looking at availability part of it, it's more strategic in nature. And then when an organization has a BCP team and the cybersecurity team, both of them have to work together towards building up that cyber resiliency. So it's tactical that you will do threat detection and you will do threat hunting, and that's important, very important. But the lowest denominator, if you see in all these threats, is the data, right? That's what adversaries are behind, and that's what we need to protect. But that's easier said than done. You need to, in looking at the current IT landscape, where you have all distributed infrastructure, a multi-cloud, multi-workload environment. Data is everywhere. It's all dispersed. So what is required right now is a unified data protection strategy, and that should be the core principle of business continuity planning. That should be to identify where all your data is residing, where is it moving, where is it shared, and have a robust architecture and robust strategy to protect that data. That's my take on it, Vinayak.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think taking this to Sanjay, and Sanjay, one of the things that I would certainly like to ask is, apart from this particular issue, is so entire the discussion of security is now increasingly getting intermingled with a lot of the geopolitics discussion as well. Like a lot of state and state actors coming into the picture, and some geographic had been always remain a challenge basically. So how do you factor those into the work that we do in day to day? And I also come to Avinash for this particular question basically.
Yeah, obviously. So for us, every threat and every threat actor is an means is an a risk to our organization. And that is the way we take it. Obviously, different source, different people, and this state organized threat actors are obviously uh, are bigger threats because they have all the tools, all the resources at their disposal, kind of thing. And that is where the threat detection, or probably the detection comes into the picture. And we so as a CISO, you go ahead and fine tune and just keep on moving day by day and ensure that your operations of detections and other things get matured to at least to have the resources and skills to detect this kind of an advanced attacks, kind of thing. That is only the thing that we could do. Obviously, there is always a framework that CISO generally follow. This is the methodology that we want to adopt. Over a period of time we mature and we ensure we are detected. So for us, as an threat, you could say a small threat, or maybe a script kiddie trying to get into your organization, where there is a small hole into your application or somewhere, it's equivalent to the APT kind of a thing. Because if something happens, obviously it's ultimately it's fire everywhere, where you have to ensure and go ahead. So we keep the baseline as an attack and the threat kind of a thing. We have the framework which we work on. As you said, MITRE is one of the important part which most of the organizations do. And we pray that APT does not happen something of those kind of a thing. And because those are very advanced kind of an attack, as I said, they have everything at their disposal, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and
Obviously,
sometimes government agencies, some
yeah,
of
yeah.
those agencies could be also helping in this type
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
yeah. So there is certain, and there are other things also where they keep on. Those things are as in standby for us. Where if you are able to detect where means there is a successful attack, kind of a thing, and these agencies keep on. So they are very much reachable, and we try to get help from them also. But obviously, from this advanced persistent threat point of view and the other, we don't differentiate, kind of a thing. An attack is an attack. So the damage would be known only post and forensic, what is the damage. But
Yeah.
it's always good to detect and respond to those things.
Yeah. So Avinash, I think usually such kind of discussion happens in the context of campaign, right? People are running campaign, and those campaigns, some people are bursting those campaigns basically, and those campaigns we do discuss, but at the end of the day, they will be impacting some organization that you will be serving basically, right? So how do you really help? One is to dig out those campaign maybe running, and more importantly then one is the hunting them and probably detecting and probably devising strategy to protect the organization. So any experience or any such kind of scenarios that you come across, and which can be, without naming client, can be discussed here.
Yeah. So, two, three things come to mind clearly, both in terms of what the way we are executing for customers, and also a couple of points that were made during our discussion now, right? Number one is that the notion of the campaign today is tying, a lot also to, the sector or segment that is getting impacted, especially if critical infrastructure comes in question. Then there's a different way in which the light needs to be,
Yeah, yeah,
shining on that.
yeah,
We ourselves are part of the critical infrastructure sector for the nation, and align with the bodies therefore like NCI, PC, certain was mentioned by Sanjay, etc. Of course, all that is also there. So there, whatever starts shaping up, as a kind of a campaign, and many things we know come from the neighboring nation. How do we start, looking at that specific APT activity, and immediately start looking at the potential target that could be coming in the line of that, and start building readiness for that, sharing information back also with certain and other search agencies and with customers. Now, when we talk about information sharing and building a smarter engagement framework with customers, given that there's so much happening already, everybody is busy, is where our focus on the enabling our threat research team with a tip, which is the threat intel platform, really helped us,
yeah,
wherein their ability to then quickly assess the data, having the right ability to query, orchestrate information to be able to push it out to the right uh, SOC teams, engagement teams, etc. Right, being able to pick from the customer database of, as you said, which sector is more impacted, and therefore how do we look at it, has helped, which means that the workflow around threat intel has become very important. How are you really able to execute around that? So that is something that definitely we have spent time on. As I said earlier, that's where software skills and other things also start coming in very handy in terms of building that. So that's clearly an area that we are looking at also. The third part of it is that I would say that the minute we start understanding it, then how we are able to start running advisories with customers. There's of course the notion of a customer who's got a paid service with you, and therefore we need to be clear on that. Customers who are just our network customers may not be a security customers, but they are depending on us to provide them internet and other such things. So there could be something which is impacting them also. Third is advisory in general also, that can be released, available on our website also. So we have to then segregate it as per that as well, and that drives some of the priority of the actions. But definitely, this is important for all the other critical platforms that we run, like our entire network, global network, the cloud platforms, etc. Also, so one needs to look at it in all these different dimensions and
yeah,
use the
yeah,
power of the platform also to build the workflows and effective execution
yeah.
around that.
And many time means all of these dimensions and the data that Sanjay talked about, volume of data is coming and the transaction velocity is significantly rising, and I think you need to look at what is happening now. You need to be mindful of what had happened until now as well. So, and then we know that technology stacks are evolving. Basically, people are solving a lot of those B2C challenges as well. So, Manish, being a technology provider, help organization, and somebody like Tata Communication doing these kind of actions, basically, help us understand the technology stack, which is playing role to enable these state hunting operations, be it a user organization or somebody like a technology provider like a Tata Communications.
Yeah. So I think there's an important point which Avinash mentioned about security intelligence, right? That's very very critical. And then security intelligence. The challenge with security intelligence in its raw form is that sometimes security teams get overwhelmed because there is so much of security intelligence available. Now there are AI, ML, and analytics engines that are available, and most important aspect of these engines and ever evolving technology, as you rightly mentioned, is that you get situational awareness and actionable security intelligence. That's critical. So, look at the priority of a CISO team, right? Does a CISO team? What would Sanjay want when he wakes up in the morning? It would be great if he gets like these are 10 top risks that he needs to look at, and look at assessing his infrastructure and look at fixing those risks. So this is something which is possible, and it's very much right now, I would say, very much available in the industry as well. So what does it means is that you are able to prioritize your risk. Risk prioritization is based on various analytics that you would do. The relevant threat campaign, which is happening to the industry, and the security technologies have eyeballs across the entire threat landscape. You get understanding of what's happening on a specific industry or what's happening in a specific region, and then look at prioritizing those risks for your organizations. Once you do that, you would do an assessment. These technologies provide you a mechanism to do assessment to understand what are the weak links in your network. And if this adversary predict, if this adversary hits your infrastructure, are you likely to get compromised? Where do you go and fix it? It will also be able to prescribe you exactly what needs to be done, what are the weak links that you need to fix. So this is something which is evolving. This technology is existing, but it's evolving, and I think it's very very important that the technologies of today, which typically are XDRs and the frameworks, XDR frameworks which are coming up, they should be able to provide this enhanced intelligence to organizations so that they can prioritize their risk and then appropriately take actions. And specifically, when it comes to nation state attacks, right? These are well funded attacks, very sophisticated attacks, and you need these powerful tools and technologies to assist the people and provide a robust assessment of security posture as well as build up that resiliency in your organization.
Okay, and Sanjay, I think until now, most of the time, those who are using these solutions were largely managing thing, right? But now increasingly, I'm hearing from a lot of CISOs is you need a lot of engineering skill in your team, data science skill in your team. So help us understand the profile of the people and the skill that are evolving in cybersecurity. Until now, it was more management of the solutions and technology, but probably that is will be changing now.
Yeah, yeah, obviously. So, what has happened till date is generally most of the at least in India, what has happened, the people from the maybe a managerial background or maybe governance or compliance kind of a thing have been moving to security kind of a side. But what generally I have been looking behind is the resource having more of a technical managerial kind of a role, but the focus is on the technical side. The reason is due to this digital adoption and the scale of the assets which is there. Now he needs to understand quite a bit of technical aspects, since he'll be interacting with more of a techno savvy departments across, because it's not only technology department that is technical. So more it's across the organization, and he has to understand the nitty gritty. He has to be better than those guys to actually bring that confidence. At least that is what we are implementing, is to secure things, and that is where at least I generally look at the technical aspects and the engineer and the engineering aspects with a little bit of a managerial. So I believe managerial aspects can be adopted over a period of time seeing, but technical aspects may not be adopted if you don't have an interest and the commitment kind of, because it seems to be boring to the managers to get into technicals. Hence the hiring and the looking for the candidates has drastically changed from the earlier what used to happen.
Yeah, and I think
At least from
the
my per se, though, that has happened. I don't know across
and
organizations what
I'm
is there.
hearing from most of the CISOs how now technology is becoming key area for them to evaluate the skills they are joining to the team. So, but another important
Yeah.
area which I think I would really like Avinash to really reflect on this is at the end of the day, we should deliver value, right? And sometimes hunting may not be delivering value, right? So, how do you make sure that you create a success factor or matrix for this? And briefly, Sanjay, you can talk about this, and then I will come to Avinash and even Manish as well on this question, probably to conclude today's discussion. Because sometimes it could be searching in dark, and you may not be really at the longer term time period. You definitely will deliver value, but sometimes it will be really difficult in terms of giving success factors or parameters or metrics for this. So, do you think that it has come to this level, Sanjay, ki some metrics can be defined and performance can be measured about the effort they're putting? Briefly, you can answer, then I'll take to Avinash and Manish as well.
Yeah, yeah. So So it's very important to measure the benefits of threat hunting. The reason I am saying that is good means if you have a really good threat hunting, that means no one has heard about it. So nothing happened, and the hunters have detected it, and it's been responded, and it's been closed. And then how do you justify the cost of it to the management? Says kuch to hua nahi hai. So then nothing has happened. So
Yeah.
that is where it's very important to have some metrics around it, so that you are able to actually indicate the value out of that threat hunting. And at least that will help you in at least to foot the bill to the management, because it's these services are not really cheap, or the resources aren't really cheap,
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
metrics. Also, it's very important to calculate what value it brings to the table, because you might have one seeing the data size, you might have one hunter to detect couple of other hunters if you want to add, because the log size and everything is there. But you need to have that matrix data and the value out of it, and then you go ahead and see, yes, actually it is making a value. So that's my perspective, and it has to be built. Till date, maybe
Yeah.
organizations would have not built, because it's kind of very plain vanilla. Chalo, it's working, it's working. But I
Yeah.
think that's very much required.
So, Avinash, you are providing services, right, on this, and I think this question you must be grappling with quite significantly. So, that has come to that level where you define the metrics and you can deliver outcome based on those metrics?
True. Yeah, this is a very interesting facet of the discussion, right? That going beyond technical service deliverables, what's the value to the organization,
Yeah.
right? And that this is a discussion that and conversation that happens. It's and truth be spoken, it's obviously it's straightforward and easy for us to articulate our performance against SLAs, articulate our performance against a specific deliverables vis-a-vis then tying it back to the value to the organization. And that's where I believe that the way we are able to model the engagement, the way we are able to find the right metrics to build a baseline of where we were, right? Because as for example, Sandhya said, right, no news is good news, but then the question will come after 1 year: what the hell were you spending money on, right? So therefore, building the right baseline, and from there having tying it to certain KPIs. So again, one size fits all will not work here. It comes with the right kind of engagement and business conversation happening with our CISO client, let us say the client CISO, and our side in terms of what is a kind of initial baseline or level that we are starting off from, and therefore what do we want to achieve. So that is more a goal oriented this thing, right? Saying that today, let's say, I have poor controls on my endpoints, not able to address it, etc., to going to saying that I've got a strong sense of controls around my endpoint. These are the kind of malwares we've been able to handle. This is how we are able to protect users. That is one kind of aspect, right?
Yeah.
Second definitely is tying back to things like where we talk about dwell time and other things. Oh, malware has been sitting there for so long. So the time of exposure, can we in
Yeah.
some way
Yeah.
capture that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talk to customers about that, right? So tied to meaningful metrics like that, there's a lot of meeting of minds that also needs to happen. We
Yeah.
can't be
Yeah.
forcing things, and it has to make sense to the customer also. But yeah, I'll be brief, and that's how I'll summarize.
Yeah, yeah. So, Manish, I will be probably concluding with your views on this one. So, technologically, are these data can be thrown so that you can showcase, means one is the user in which is using this, another is the provider which is providing service on top of it. So, our technology evolved to provide those kind of performance parameters or delivery to this entire exercise of threat hunting.
Yeah. So threat hunting, as rightly mentioned by Avinash, right? It's very difficult to bind it to a matrix, right? I mean, you will have for various services, you will have SLAs. But what about threat hunting? I mean, you have deployed certain analysts, and you don't have a threat incident that has happened for an entire month. Does that mean that the value there's no value of threat hunting? Definitely, it is. So I would say that to measure it, one of the key aspect would be continuous compliance, right? It has to be one of the key factors and key metrics that will provide some sort of measurement. I understand that currently all those compliance which we have is more from governance perspective and more in terms of uh, uh, how many endpoints are compliant, how many endpoints are getting latest DAT files, what about data security. These are the kind of compliances that we have, but definitely more thought process needs to be aligned in terms of how do we have a measurable matrix and measurable compliance that can be factored in for looking at increasing the security posture of an organization in form of threat hunting. So that's my brief take on it.
And with this, in the interest of time, this is really going very interesting way. But we, interest of time, we need to definitely close. But thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Manish, and thank you, Avinash, for being here and joining this discussion and putting quite a good, interesting, nuanced level of discussion. At the same time, helping understanding the larger tactical and strategic way of looking at the attending as well. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you to
Mac.
dear Sai, my fellow
Thank you.
panelists, as well as the
Thank
audience.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you